No one can know I was here.
Has there been a bigger game changer in the world of The Boys than Season 5, Episode 3? We don't think so. We went from Homelander feeling desperate and the boys having the upper hand with the Supe Virus, to now Homelander possessing the key to immortality and the boys being more divided than ever before. It's clear to us that from this point onward, the rest of the team will do their own thing while Butcher does what he does best. And that's not the only difference between the show and its source material. Today we'll be taking a look at the 7 biggest differences between The Boys comics and Season 5, Episode 3. So strap on your spoiler warning hats, because you're in the splash zone.
It is my honor to present Soldier Boy with the first ever Democratic Medal of...
Soldier Boy is in the 7. We've spoken about how different Soldier Boy is from his original counterpart many times on this channel, so we want to switch gears for a minute and talk about why his inclusion in the 7 is such a major change, and why it matters. Because believe it or not, Soldier Boy was kind of supposed to be in the 7 in the comics as well, but not because he's a nepo daddy, because he assumed that his efforts would grant him a promotion, so to speak. The other thing that's common between Soldier Boy from the comics and the show, apart from their Supe name, is the fact that they were members of Payback. In fact, Payback was Vought's premier Supe team in the 20th century, according to the show lore. But in the comics, Payback is contemporaneous to the 7, and Soldier Boy isn't its leader. He's the scaredy cat who wants to obey orders meekly. And that just isn't Ben, now is it? Plus, comics Payback's chance to replace the 7 is squandered pretty much as soon as it comes up, thanks to one Billy Butcher. In the comics, it isn't little Nina who pays Kimiko and Frenchie a visit in the hospital, it's the entire Payback team. And the boys are on hand to fight back against those clowns. In fact, Butcher pretty much single-handedly defeats Payback and traces their steps back to their hideout, where he kills everyone besides Stormfront and Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy he captures for sharp questioning. Stormfront is dealt with in time. This is drastically different from the show, where Soldier Boy is now second in authority only to Homelander, and Payback was dealt with by him. And speaking of authority, Vought's infiltration of the US government. Soldier Boy's inclusion to the 7 came with a brand new medal, specifically the Democratic Medal of Patriotic Freedom, which was created specifically to facilitate him. This is a congressional medal, meaning it was commissioned by the government, and that's a major departure from the comics, because there, Vought's infiltration of Congress was the long game that was never really finished. The comic books portrayed the United States government in a much more competent light, if you can believe it, because for most of its run, the boys were technically government employees. The CIA kept them on agency payroll to eliminate threats to America's actual military-industrial complex, and planting Victor Newman in the president's camp was Vought's way of bypassing governmental restrictions. That didn't really end up happening because all hell broke loose by the time the comics reached that stage, but in the show, Vought is practically running the government already. They've got Ashley in the White House, her superior bringing Homelander beverages, and generally speaking, America should be renamed Voughtland, considering their influence on the government. There was no Federal Bureau of Supe Affairs, no conservative power base, no usage of actual federal resources to further Vought's agenda. Their whole fight with the government was to get Supes in the administration, but in the show, that's already happened, and the fact that Soldier Boy was given a medal specifically created for him is proof that the show has departed majorly from the source material when it comes to Vought's governmental aspirations.
Millions of people just hate me.
Well, then you baptize the unfaithful.
Homelander's prophetic vision. So you guys remember the mirror scene, right? The one where Homelander starts talking to himself, and we see his Jekyll and Hyde on full display? Well, that scene's dialogue might have been different from what happens in the comics, but its intent was pretty much the same. It highlighted his descent into madness, and we'd be lying if we said we didn't feel that descent radiating off Homelander long before the scene made it into the show. But in Season 5, there's another scene that tops him talking to the mirror on his wall, and that's when he has a full-blown hallucination about Madeline Stillwell, who appears to him as an angel enabling death and offering her mammary glands to him for nutrition. We got a hint that something like this was coming in Episode 2 when Homelander heard the words "my sweet boy" during O Father's address, but we didn't expect it to turn into an all-out murder fantasy. When Stillwell arrives, looking like a golden goddess, we were thrilled at first, because any day we get to see Elizabeth Shue on our screens is a good day indeed. But then the scene became uncomfortably disturbing, because Hallucination Stillwell essentially validated Homelander's homicidal urges by claiming that ripping babies from mothers' wombs and tearing dissenters apart wouldn't hurt his image. It would make his followers love him even more. Even Mirror Homelander wasn't as convincing to John Gilman as Angel Maddie was, and yes, Homelander making orgasm noises while kneeling and presumably getting sprayed with faux Stillwell juice was funny. The underlying context of that shot is terrifying. Homie's mind has clearly snapped, and it isn't even being toyed with by Black Noir like it was in the comics. And that's why this particular scene is perhaps the most dangerous deviation from the source material, because it's proof that nothing anyone says or does can stop Homelander anymore. That scene with the milk. Speaking of Stillwell juice, the fact that Homie took a bath in grade A pure mammary breast milk that he got from Mount Sinai was as disturbing as Angel Maddie, because it's a sign that he's no longer interested in playing by the rules. Earlier, he would have kept his love for breast milk hidden, because it shamed him to admit it, but now, he's no longer hiding those parts of himself. Heck, he even told his father to screw off in not so many words, because in that moment, he was ruining Homelander's rest and digest program. And really, Soldier Boy's got nothing on him in terms of pure power. Plus, the whole milk obsession storyline is a new concept anyway, because in the comics, Homelander wasn't exactly different from the rest of Vought's supes. The show made it a point to tell us that he's the only member of the Seven that doesn't drink or do drugs, but in the comics, Homelander drinks and participates in Herogasm, which he looks down on in Amazon's adaptation. Breast milk being his drug is an amazing analogy for his mommy issues, because Homie doesn't have those either in the comics, and that bathtub scene spoke a million words through a short yet tense dialogue exchange. Cindy. In the scene where Vought's tracking team infiltrated Stan Edgar's bunker while looking for the boys, you see traces of that payback mission we mentioned at the beginning of this video. But you know what else you see? A character that isn't supposed to be there, and that's Cindy. The Deep's role has been expanded by the show, Black Norris has been reimagined extensively, and Dognaught didn't die with the rest of Teenage Kicks like he did in the comics. But Cindy and everything that happens with and around her? Totally new. There's no mental health patient turned test subject turned concentration, we mean freedom camp security guards in the comics. So all things Cindy related are different from the source material. This also makes the inclusion of her imaginary friends an unexpectedly light moment in an otherwise dark and gritty episode, because we were all the deep when we heard the details of that story. Cindy showed us that Stan Edgar's bunker works just fine, because even with her powers, she wasn't able to break through the entrance like she crumpled those reinforced steel doors at Sage Grove. And she also showed us that even Omega-level supes aren't immune to having their necks broken. While we will miss this crazy 11 cosplayer, we're not exactly shedding a tear for her. And everything that's been a part of her storyline, from her escape to her demise, is not something the comics ever portrayed or even attempted to address. But speaking of Stan Edgar...
That won't be necessary.
At least, not yet.
Stan Edgar versus James Stillwell. The show's decision to turn Vought into a modern multinational corporation gave us one of the best characters in Stan Edgar. But it also did something that the comics never did, which is ousting the head of Vought from a position of power. Eric Kripke and his team turned the comic book leader of Vought, James Stillwell, into Angel Maddie to play up Homelander's mommy issues. And they turned Vic the Veep into Vicky Newman, Edgar's adopted daughter, to raise the political stakes even further. But removing Stan Edgar from power and bringing him back to Vought as a prisoner, who will now have to cooperate with Homelander if he wants to stay alive, is a show-exclusive narrative, because in the comics, James Stillwell never lost control of his company. In fact, he stayed in control to the point that he practically engineered Homelander's insanity and the eventual cleanup of his disastrous White House campaign. And he even managed to dodge accountability for all of it by turning his assistant into the fall girl for everything. Stan Edgar is clearly supposed to be James' counterpart, because they both have the same philosophy and manipulative prowess. But the fact that one of them is actively on the run from his employees while the other managed to retain his hold over them is a massive change, which makes us question Stanny Boy's competence just a little bit. James Stillwell would never have allowed himself to be treated with such impunity, because he isolated himself from everyone and played them all like a fiddle. Stan made the mistake of thinking he could do the same thing without investigating the vested interest of the people that he was using, which is why he's failing where James succeeded. Also, seeing MM tell him that he'll put a bullet in his head before he lets him return to Vought felt extremely satisfying, because that's something he never got to do to James in the comics. And now we also know that whenever Stan gives you a compliment, it's not a compliment, it's a threat, which is the only thing that's been carried over from his comic book counterpart accurately. Annie and Hughie's fights. One of the biggest things about the ending of Season 5, Episode 3 was Annie choosing to abandon Hughie and isolate herself. It's not like their comic book counterparts never fought with each other. In fact, Starlight and Wee Hughie probably fought more than Annie January and Petite Hughie do. The biggest difference in their dynamic from page to screen has been the shift in power dynamics and character motivations, because in the comics, Hughie is extremely insecure and overcorrects and compensates to hide that insecurity. But in the show, he becomes a strong man who knows what's what and is willing to do the right thing, even without Compound V in his system. Yes, we do get a glimpse of comic book Hughie in Episode 3, when he talks to Maverick, who, by the way, is also a show-only character, and another deviation from the comics. He could have just left Maeve alone and focused on the task at hand, but no, Hughie had to be the good guy, and that put everyone in trouble. This happens in the comics too, but Wee Hughie never takes things in stride like Jack Quaid's Hughie does, and most of his fights with Starlight are about him, not her. In fact, the show has decided to skip over Hughie's many nightmares about Starlight sleeping with other men entirely because A, they'd be extremely tone deaf, and B, she is the problem right now. The reason Annie abandoned Hughie is because she can't handle his constant optimism, and the fact that he could have died when Cindy accidentally blew up Maverick was her last straw. In the comics, she wasn't even a resistance leader. She took part in the final phase of the plan as a member of the Seven working against her teammates, whereas now Annie is a rebel to some and literally Satan to others. Hughie doesn't exactly bitch and moan all the time like he does in the comics, and Starlight isn't playing the game on the boys' terms like she does in the comics. They have the same names, but they're completely different characters for all intents and purposes. And that's why Annie and Hughie's fights are a total deviation from their character dynamic in Garth Ennis' work. Speaking of deviations, we hope you enjoyed this list of the 7 biggest differences between the comics and Season 5 Episode 3, because that's all we've got for you today. What did you guys think? Did we miss out on something? Or are these things you didn't notice till we pointed them out? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content from the Boys Verse one last time. We'll see you guys real soon with yet another video, so until then, stay safe and have a nice day.